Hello, welcome back. Previously on Raz's Raspberry Pi tutorials, we had a arcade button connected, and when you press the button, it does something. It does whatever we want. It runs a function that we made called button down. And when you let go of the button, it runs a different function called button release. Good, and you can put whatever code you want in here to do whatever you like. And what we would like to do is to combine it with this code. Okay? So make sure you got this code, which is to display a graph on the Raspberry Pi, a bar graph on the Raspberry Pi, using a CSV. So make sure that you've got this code working and that you've tested that it works. And it lights up the bar graph. And make sure that you've got this code as well, and you've tested it and lights up the bar graph and everything. And we're going to combine them. But how? Well, we're going to make it so when you press a button, it lights up one CSV file. You press a different button, it lights up another one. How cool would that be? Yeah, nice. I reckon we can do that. Let's start with this one. I'm going to copy this, or first run it. First run it and check that it lights up your board. And I'm going to make it in a new file. I'm going to save this and call it something else. Maybe I'll call it CSV, or maybe graph with buttons. There you go. .py, because it's a Python file. Beautiful. Now, currently it just opens this CSV file. It always loads the one CSV file. We want to make it a little bit more flexible, so it doesn't always open the same CSV file. So to do that, let's make a variable called file name, which is set to our CSV file. And now in here, instead of always using that exact file name and having to hard code it, having to tell the computer what it is, we can just say, oh yeah, it's in that variable called file name. Whatever was in that variable, which is this, use that. Run that and check it. It should work exactly the same, because file name is that value anyway. It makes no difference. The only reason why it's handy for us to do it this way is that now our code is more flexible. Now we can give it any file name we want. In fact, we can get all this complicated, ugly code and we can put it in a function. We can define a new function called draw CSV graph, because it's drawing a graph using a CSV file. And that function will take one piece of information. The one piece of information that function needs is a file name. This is called the argument of the function. The function can have no arguments, meaning no information needed, or it can take some information, one piece of information, or many pieces of information. But we just need one piece of information, the file name. To show that all of this code from here to here belongs in that file name, belongs in that function, we can indent it. That means moving it all over. Now you could, if you wanted to, do space, 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 space. But it's really tedious and you'll probably make a mistake. So to move the whole thing over to show that it is inside that function, you select all of it and press tab. Now it's all part of draw CSV graph. Now if I run the function now, in theory nothing should happen. Yeah, maybe the graph is still lit from the last time we ran it, but we've imported this CSV library and the substrand library that we wrote. We've declared what the file name is, but we never actually run this function. The way to run this function is to do the name of the function, draw CSV graph, and then brackets, and then the information that it needs. So let's put that information that it needs. We don't need this variable called file name anymore. And that's how you run the function. Before I do run this, I'm going to take this line. It doesn't make sense to call a function before it exists. Yeah? I'm guessing it's going to cause an error. Because at this moment, when we get to line 4, It's never heard of what draw CSV graph is. It doesn't know how to do it yet. So first, we need to teach it how to do it with this code here. And then at the very, very end, then we can tell the computer to do it. So if you press run, this should work and be fine, do the same thing that it did before. But then why did we bother doing it? Well, now we can have a function to draw the first graph. We can have a function, button 1 press, and when you press the first button, it draws synth pop. Maybe I'll call this graph 1.csv, and then I can copy this, copy, Control C, Control V. But button 2 draws graph 2. So they do different things. Now this still won't work because I still haven't told it about the buttons and told it that when you press a button, it has to run this function. But you can see how I can recycle this code and run it for many different file names. Okay, so how does this work? I need to go now to my button test. I'm going to need these libraries, so I'll copy those lines up here where I'm importing all my libraries because I'll need the button class and I'll need the pause function. And down here, I need to make a new button and run something when it's pressed. I don't really care about when it's released, but we'll run when it's pressed. Let's go back in here. So we'll call it button 1. Button 1 dot when pressed equals button down. But we don't have a function called button down. Let's run it and check that there really is an error. Okay, so I've defined a new button. I'm trying to say when it's pressed, run a function called button down. But the function is actually called button 1 press. Double click on it, Control C, double click, Control V. Nice. You could type it, but that seems faster to me. Right. And now we can pause at the end, and hopefully it should work. Now, if you actually press that button, you'll need to have it wide in. If you press it, no, I couldn't find it. Well, there is no file called graph1.csv. We do have an example of what that should look like, which is this here. I'm going to make an even easier example. Not that it will be super easy, it'll still be a little bit hard to think about. I'm going to copy the old CSV file and go in here and paste. There we go. And just to make things easier, I'm going to call this A, this B. In fact, I probably don't even need the name of the band. So I'm going to delete the name of the band. I'm only going to keep 2, so it's easier to test, just 2 rows. I don't even need the sales, so I'm going to delete the sales. There we go. So now I've just got the number of on pixels, the start pixel, how many pixels are in the strip, and whether it's reverse. So make sure that you've got pixels substrands that are 5 long, 2 substrands, each with 5 neopixels in it. I'll make one graph that's maybe I'll make one graph that's, quite highly lit. 4 out of 5 will be lit. And I'll call this save graph 1.csv. And I'll make the other graph later. All right. So now that we've got graph 1, when I press the button, it should draw graph 1. And you should see 4 neopixels lit on the first substrand and 4 lit on the second. Run. So if you press that button now, which I'm going to do now, yeah, that's what you should see. All right. We also need the same for button 2. So now I've got button 1 working. Now I can say button 2, maybe on pin, what's another pin? I've already used pin number 2. I'll just do pin number 3. So for your other button, connect ground to any of the ground pins, here. When I say ground, I really mean this common pin to any of those ground pins. And connect this wire here to pin number 3. So now you've got 2 arcade buttons connected. For example, maybe you might want to do pin 3 and background, because that one's quite close to it. Okay. So we've got that connected. Now that was pin number 3. So I can say button 2 is a button on pin 3. And when it's pressed, run the function called, oh, that was sneaky, button 2 press. Be careful when you copy and paste and change code that you really do change it everywhere. Now I'm going to stop this, run. Okay, so if I press button 1, it still lights up button 1 as expected. But if I press button 2, yes, that's good. That's what I want to happen. And I'm not just saying that. Look, that just has sour grapes. File not found error. It couldn't find graph2.csv because we haven't made it. So now that we've got this for graph 1, make a new file for graph 2. Graph 2, normally all of this will be the same for both of your CSV files. The only thing that will be different is the number of on pixels. So maybe this one has, no pixels on the first one and 1 pixel on the second one. If I save this now as graph2.csv and go back to graph with buttons, now if I press button 1, it shows graph 1, and if I press button 2, it shows graph 2. Okay, hopefully that worked for you. You can make these with Excel as well. You can export different CSV files, one with one set of data and one with another set of data. All right, good luck, have fun, and until next time, see ya.